Hey GBA fans, it's your friend Choice CJ here, and I am back with my final week of D-League season number 4. It's been a bit of a roller coaster of a season, there's no doubt about that. We started off relatively strong, 2-0, beat the defending runner-up, and then proceeded to go on a pretty nasty losing streak. We've lost, I guess, 7 of our last 8. We are 3-7 now. And it's definitely a bit of a bummer for the season to give us that sort of record. But at the same time, I don't really have any regrets about the season. It's been extremely fun. All of the games that I've played have been pretty entertaining. I don't think I played poorly, like really poorly in any of them. There's probably a few plays I'd like to have back. But generally, I'm proud of the way that I played. We got to make a lot of really good friends. You know, we're friends with some of the folks already, but I've gotten to know Randy and Leo a lot better, for example. We have a little Fortnite crew where we play lots of Fortnite each week. And so that's partly because of D-League, so thanks to them for that. You know, so it's been an overall very rewarding experience, and I want to give a big thanks to Tom for being commissioner of D-League and also of GBA main, of course. Big thanks to Jolt for all of his help and you know, in the selection and everything. Thanks to Aster for power rankings. Thanks to the other analysts, Polly and Sock, for all their work. Even the weekly recap analysts who sort of flamed out after like 1 or 2 weeks. I want to give thanks to them. I know that it's a lot of work to follow along, and so I understand how they got into the position of not really posting the videos anymore. But you know, I'm so glad that they took interest. And I want to thank, of course, all the fans. Whether you're new to the channel from this season or you've been a part of this channel since 2.5 years ago when I started in Orange League and in UBC Season 2. I want to thank all you guys for all the support. And so we'll try and go off with a bang. Regardless of how this game finishes, we are going to be kept out of playoffs. It's not going to be the end of Choice CJ action. We do have another league coming up that was announced over the weekend. We're going to be in the United Battle League. I think that's what it's called. The UBL, run by Hair Horde and my good pal Deebs, who is also a GBA D-League competitor. And that's going to be really awesome. It's going to be picking up end of September. Has a really great roster featuring folks like Leo and also A-Drive. Uzi Gunner, one of the GBA analysts from this past season, is the defending champ. And there's a tremendous list of folks. I don't want to just rattle them all off. I would recommend you guys check out the Twitter for the UBL to get all the details on who's participating this upcoming season. So this is not the end for me, just the end of the GBA D-League season, and I anticipate that I'll be back as an analyst again for the main season, and again whenever D-League occurs next. I hope that I'm invited to be a part of that. So all that out of the way, let's quickly hop into the team for you know, the team matchup for this week, and then I'll go into the battle. So for our final week, we are going up against Goldoa Dragon, a coach of the New York Empoleon. And Goldoa's had a very surprising season. Coming into this, I don't think anybody anticipated that he would be a playoff contender. But going into this game, he has already clinched his playoff spot. So he is sort of like the Randy of this season, in that he was a relative unknown to at least the greater GBA community, and really took everybody by storm. And like on paper, his team, it's good, but it sort of seemed a little like Gen 6 to me, in that it was way more balanced than I expect most teams to be. But he's really made it work for him. He's made it work out for him very, very well. And as you can see, he's got a roster of Victini, Mega Venusaur, Haxorus, Melodic, Gardevoir, Bisharp, Ditto, Tornadus Incarnate, Vikavolt, Dugtrio, and Gigalith. So he did make some transactions in the middle of the season. He had Excadrill and some other bonds, and he ended up picking up Dugtrio instead. You know, he's made it work in all situations. So when I say this team, it seems like very Gen 6. The core Melodic and Venusaur just strikes me as so distinctly Gen 6. Because again, like, balance was a more prevalent play style. Mega Venusaur it's a nice bulky mon, and but it's sort of fallen out of favor because with Z moves it's a whole lot easier to break. Bisharp was way more prevalent in Gen 6 than it is now. It's certainly still very scary, but it's just not as popular. There are certainly some Gen 7 aspects to his team, like the Sand Gigalith and also the Vikavolt being there as a new Mon that was added in Gen 7. A really cool Mon, I'll add. I've had my fair share of troubles with Vikavolt in Draft League in the past. But yeah, like I said, Goldoa's really found a way to make it work. He has a 7-3 record coming to this game, so totally flip-flopped from where we were. What's at stake in this game is Goldoa could potentially get a bye week if we are able to beat him. So even though he's locked into playoffs and I'm locked out of playoffs, there's still potentially something to play for. And so for that reason, I want to at least give it a decent shot. And I decided that the best overall strategy for this week would be to bring a lot of setup mons. Because I think because his team is sort of balanced, it has potentially some opportunities to set up on different members of his team. He's also lacking a fighting type, which is extremely notable in this case. So I wanted to try and take advantage of those different characteristics of his team. And so to start things off, I do want to show you guys my Mega Latios set. Pretty standard looking DD Latios. It's DD3 attacks. It's not even DD Roost. We're just going ham with this thing with Earthquake, Zen Headbutt, Outrage. Earthquake is there to hit things like Gardevoir and Bisharp. Zen Headbutt's important for hitting Mega Venusaur. Also, Earthquake does hit Victini for super effective damage without having to lock myself into Outrage. But yeah, Outrage, if he doesn't have Gardevoir, if Gardevoir gets eliminated, Outrage is very good versus his team. Does he, yeah, other than Bisharp, which Bisharp isn't going to take a +1 Outrage extremely well anyway. But yeah, so just going with a pretty normal looking spread, enough speed for Victini, rest into attack into HP. Next, we're going into Davos Seaworth, or Celebi, with a Subcall mindset. This actually used to be Suicune, with the Subcall Mind Protect. But Celebi actually made a lot more sense for a Subcall Mind user this week because it actually has the coverage to deal with things like Venusaur and Melodic, whereas Suicune would definitely struggle versus those two things. It can outspeed, and it can go for sub-protect shenanigans, but it just has such a hard time breaking them. So Celebi does that a lot better. We have enough speed on this thing for max speed Gardevoir. We have enough special defense so that if we get to +1, our substitute is not broken by Melodic's Ice Beam. And then we just put the rest into HP into defense. I think this could be really potent versus his team. It does force a lot of switches with mons like Dugtrio, Melodic, things like that. So we have some good opportunities, I think, to get off that free substitute. So next, we've got kind of a mean set, both in terms of the actual moves, but also in terms of the nickname. We're bringing Licky Licky for the first time this season, and for the sake of time, I didn't really think of a more creative nickname than Tim the Tatman. He's a fairly prominent Fortnite streamer who is one of my favorites. He gets unfairly teased for having a little bit of girth. And so, sort of to honor him, and also because it's a lazy nickname, we're bringing Licky Licky, aka Tim the Tatman. And it's a simple Curse Rest talk set. Because he doesn't have a fighting type, he has an extremely hard time breaking through this. And that's also complemented by the fact that Licky Licky has Oblivious, so that means it can't be taunted. So if he wants to pack something like Taunt Gardevoir or something like that, he's not going to be able to prevent me from cursing. And he can't beat me with status or anything like that. The only thing he can beat me with is phasing, and if I get into a last mon Licky Licky situation, he's not going to be able to phase me out. So I think this is a really, really reliable win condition, as long as he doesn't bring something like Specs or Banned Victini. Like, Specs Victini should be pretty good no matter what. Banned Victini is good versus this before I get up to +2 in terms of defense boosts. So I think it's just really, really potent versus him. So the one thing that's really scary about using these three mons is Ditto. And so I think we can get ourselves into a relatively good situation. Like with Celebi, we have Substitute, so Ditto can't trace stat boosts behind Substitute. It doesn't trace the mon at all if you're behind a Substitute. Lottie, we kind of have to be a little careful because Earthquake spam versus me can be scary. But otherwise, if it wants to lock himself into the Dragon or Psychic move, I do have my Klefki, which can pretty easily take that on. And then in case of Licky Licky, if this thing gets to +6/+6 and he wants to bring in his Ditto and trace me, I do have my Sacred Sword Terrakion to help deal with that. So Sacred Sword only does like 75% to the Licky Licky spread that I have, but the difference is that Licky Licky has a lot of base HP, and Ditto only has like 58 base HP. So when you take that into account, Terrakion is actually able to almost always kill Ditto from full HP at +6/+6 with Sacred Sword. So that's why we have this. Close Combat Stone Edge just to have the other stab moves, and Stealth Rock because it's kind of the only mon I could fit it on this week. We're rocking Shed Shell so that Dugtrio cannot trap us. Similarly, we do have Shed Shell Klefki with double status. So double status I thought was important because I wanted to have at least one mon with Toxic on the team, so that way I could deal with Melodic if it's if it wants to try and wall something like DD Lottie or try and switch in on Terrakion. Having the ability to Toxic that is really nice. I also want a Thunder Wave to try and take care of Dragon Dance Haxorus or a setup Victini. It's also useful for Venusaur. Venusaur doesn't really appreciate being Thunder Waved because then it can't as easily recover stall, or synthesis stall versus things. And then Foul Play Rough is a pretty good coverage for this matchup. Allows me to hit most things. It hits like a Play Rough, a Thunder Wave to Victini. Foul Play does a decent bit to Haxorus if it's paralyzed, and etc. etc. So just a really solid mon for stopping a lot of his best strats in the game. And we just went with a full defensive spread, so that way we could take on Haxorus as well as possible. And then last but not least, we have a Safety Goggles Swords Dance Drapion as being my primary switch into Venusaur. Because I am running like an offensive Lottie this week, I thought that this was appropriate. And the fact that it's not Mega, of course, means that I can run something like Safety Goggles. Venusaur is always tricky because it can beat its checks by packing Sleep Powder. And so, hopefully, Safety Goggles allows us to work around that. We don't have the ability to 2-hit KO Venusaur naturally with this spread, so that's why we've gone for a Swords Dance set. Because with this kind of investment, he can't do too much damage to us with just his stab moves. He really needs like Earthquake or something like that to do a lot of damage. And then we can do quite a bit back once we get up to +2 and we start going for Poison Jab versus him. It's pretty strong. We also have a bit of defensive investment on this thing. Basically, it's enough defense investment so that way a Jolly Dugtrio cannot kill us after rocks. So, just a kind of a nice thing for us because, this is very easy for Dugtrio to trap. I wanted at least some sort of recourse for it, since I didn't want to put Shed Shell on it as well. So yeah, that's the team, guys. Let's now flip on over to the battle, and as you can see, Goldoa has brought his Victini, his Haxorus, his Gardevoir, Tornadus Eye, Dugtrio, and Melodic. So definitely relieved not to see the Venusaur. Venusaur is pretty hard for me to break down, even with my double Psychic types on the team. So that's a relief. There's no cheeky stuff like Bisharp to Pursuit Trap my Psychics. Melodic is there. I'm going to have to be very careful of that. I really hope it's not Flame Orb. Flame Orb is sort of his best way of dealing with Terrakion. I don't know what else he's got on the squad to help deal with that besides Dugtrio. So I'm a little weary of that because if he is Flame Orb, obviously I can't Toxic it. And that's pretty spooky. I gotta be careful of setup Haxorus sets. I don't really have a good Hurricane switch in on my team besides Klefki, so I have to preserve that HP to deal with the Tornadus. And yeah, those are sort of my initial thoughts at team matchup. My lead of choice is going to be the Latios, because on his end, like, it leads pretty well versus a lot of his team, except for maybe Scarf Haxorus and Scarf Gardevoir. And I think his most likely lead is a Victini if he wants to rock like a choice Victini in some way. Lottie does just match up fairly well versus that, resisting both of the stabs. And of course, Victini does get coverage for Lottie. It gets U-turn, it gets Icy Wind, and it gets Dazzling Gleam. But I think I can take each of those relatively well as long as he's not like choice specs. And I can see what he wants to do, but potentially just set up a Dragon Dance right away. He doesn't really have a great way of immediately dealing with Dragon Dance Lottie. I just basically get a chunk of damage off on something if he wants to try and revenge kill me. So with that in mind, we're just going to go ahead and hit play. And we are going to lead with our Latios, like I said. So good luck, have fun, Goldoa. I hope that you end up doing well in playoffs, but I hope that we can catch the W in this game. I feel like ending with a 4-7 record is going to be much better than ending with a 3-8 record. So we're going to do our best to make it happen. And as anticipated, he does lead with his Victini. And so, for me, if he's like a Scarf Victini, him just going for a Choice Scarf U-turn makes a lot of sense. And if he wants to do that, it'll do a decent chunk of damage to us, but we do have an opportunity to get off a Dragon Dance relatively scotch-free. And so we are going to go for that Dragon Dance. We actually outspeed, so he's not a Scarf set. And then he is, as you're going to see in just a moment here, going to go for a Flame Charge. And so I thought this was a bit weird. I'm not sure what he was necessarily expecting on my part for me to go for, that he wanted to go for a Flame Charge. But I am going to follow up with an Earthquake. And you're going to see in just a moment here, we're actually going to end up landing a crit on this Victini. Which at the time I didn't think really mattered, like if he was an offensive Victini. Earthquake does 98% min, but he told me that he was a bulky weakness policy set, and so he would have gotten up to +2, and he would have hit us with a +2 Shadow Ball in that situation, which would have pretty much killed us, and potentially cleaned up the rest of our team. So we got pretty lucky there. There are still some scenarios potentially where we could have won with Last Mon Licky Licky, like I said, but we would have probably lost 4 to 5 Mons there if we didn't get that crit on the Victini. So definitely stings for him. I feel bad about it. Not saying that he would have definitely won, but it definitely would have made the match easier to have his best win con. So anyway, he goes into Melodic, Dragon Tails out my Lottie. I was happy to get a chunk of damage off on that thing with the Outrage. He's able to phase in my Celebi, which is fantastic for me, actually, because I can easily just go for a substitute as he brings in the Gardevoir. And so I don't know what this Gardevoir's moveset is or anything like that. If it's not Scarfed, I do outspeed it, so I can go for a Calm Mind and see what he wants to do. Because if he's got like max attack Moonblast, it should still break my sub. But if he breaks my sub and he doesn't have a status move like Toxic, I can get up a second Calm Mind, and then I would be able to set up a sub for free versus this thing. He does show that he has Taunt, though, which is going to prevent me from going for extra Calm Mind, so really nice prep on his part. I'm happy that I was able to outspeed, because I could at least get off one Calm Mind, and I ended up not wasting a turn, and I can get off a decent chunk of damage with this Earth Power. So this seems that it's a very offensive Gardevoir based on the amount of Earth Power damage that it just took. So that's good information for me. And yes, again, that Moonblast is going to break the sub because it is maxed at special attack. Or at least that's what I've learned from that. And so I don't want to take any more damage on my Celebi. I think I have other opportunities later in the game to get off the substitute if I want. I'm going to choose to go into my Klefki, as he is going to go for the Moonblast and do a pretty decent chunk of damage. I don't want to take too much damage on my Celebi, or sorry, on my Klefki, because like I said, I need to keep this around for Haxorus and Tornadus. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy to have this thing in here. I go for Play Rough, just because if he wants to stay in and spam a move versus me, it'll do a decent chunk of damage, and he doesn't really have a Play Rough resist at this point anyway. Like, his best switch in is maybe Bisharp, which doesn't really count. But he does go into his Melodic, and I know on this turn that he's very likely to recover, and so this seems like a very good opportunity for me to just get off the Toxic, and then pivot it back into my Celebi. Because, again, this is a pretty safe switch in for my Celebi. If he already has Dragon Tail and Recover, it's pretty possible that he doesn't have a move like Ice Beam. So the substitutes are looking pretty good versus this thing. So yeah, Celebi does come out once again, as he chooses to go for Scald. Definitely don't mind that. Don't take very much damage. And the fact that he does burn me here is a little annoying, but luckily it's mitigated by the fact that I have Natural Cure. It just means that setting up substitutes here is a little bit less relevant. But yeah, I guess there's what he could go into here is most likely his Gardevoir again. So I'm pretty sure I make a double switch, if I recall correctly. No, he just withdraws. Sorry, we played this like a week ago, having a hard time remembering. He goes into his Tornadus, and so this is what I was worried maybe he would do, like if I wanted to go for Earth Power. Him going into Tornadus seems like a pretty good play. I go for the Psychic, get a special defense drop. Based on the damage, it does seem like it's a pretty offensive Tornadus. And so his U-turn here is fairly obvious, and so anticipating that, I do want to go. I could potentially go into my Keys, but if he does that, he can very easily go and U-turn into basically whatever he wants. I figured Drapion was a little bit better. He doesn't have like I guess he has the Dugtrio switch in here, but Drapion is not that important because Venusaur did not come. So to preserve as much HP on my Klefki as possible, I'm happy to just go into Drapion and let it go down to this Dugtrio. But it turns out, due to the defense investment that I have, that we're actually able to survive this Earthquake from the Dugtrio. I think based on the amount of HP that I was at after that U-turn, I had like a 62% chance to live, which was pretty wild. And so we did live that. We were able to get rid of this thing's Focus Sash, and now we can easily go into our Celebi and potentially do some damage to his team. I'd go for the Substitute here. This is a little bit of a mistake, just because you know, he was pretty likely to stay in with his Dugtrio. Wasn't very likely to get a free switch there. One, because he already knows I have Substitute, and two, this Dugtrio is at a fairly low amount of HP. I guess he could still use it to trap my Klefki or my Terrakion, or at least he could think that. But like, I think the move that he made to leave it in makes plenty of sense as well. So basically, I gave up a little bit of HP for not really any good reason. It stinks too that I got crit by the Shadow Claw, really reducing the amount of HP that this Celebi has. And so in a moment here, he's actually going to go into his Tornadus. And yeah, because my Celebi is at kind of a low amount of HP, I'm just going to choose to sack it off to this U-turn. Because then he'll have to be forced to go into something, or he will be forced to go into something, and I can go into a mon of my choice and potentially get a revenge kill. It's looking like maybe this Tornadus is the Scarfer, because it doesn't seem like Gardevoir is, and so the fact that he has to switch out of Tornadus means that my Terrakion, which outspeeds pretty much every mon on his team besides Tornadus, has the opportunity to come in here and get a kill. And so, part of the reasoning I went to Terrakion as well is because I, for a moment, thought that I was Rock Z, and I would be guaranteed a kill if I just click Continental Crush. But after remembering that I was Shed Shill, I go, oh crap, okay, well I can't switch out now. Let me just hope I hit Stone Edge, and I do, and I'm able to take out that Gardevoir, so that's pretty fantastic. Now there's Melodic's in here, and I don't need my Terrakion for anything. He doesn't have Ditto. This Melodic is already pretty weak from the combination of the Outrage early in the game and the Toxic that's now on it. So I'm going to take this as an opportunity to just get up my rocks and then try and get this thing as weak as possible, because if I do get this thing quite a bit weaker, then my Latios has an opportunity to clean. So I get up those rocks to limit Tornadus' switch-ins, and I go for close combat just to get the max amount of damage possible. It does, of course, do quite a bit less, thanks to the fact that it is Toxic, and it has that Marvel Scale activated. He's going to be able to kill me with the next Scald. So the crit obviously didn't matter in that situation. We are going to go down now, I think, to 3-3. Yeah, he has his Melodic left, his Haxorus, and his Tornadus. I have my Lottie, my Licky Licky, and my Klefki. And so, I felt like going Lottie was the best play because it is in range of Zen Headbutt, and I don't think it's likely that he's going to go for a Recover or anything this turn anyway. He should just want to stay in and click Dragon Tail and prevent me from setting up. And if he wanted to go into something like Tornadus would die to Zen Headbutt, and Haxorus would also take a damage to Zen Headbutt. But he does go into Haxorus here. It's a sort of a tricky situation, right? Because the way that he brings us in, it definitely screams that it's Scarf. But he could just be like doing a really good bluff with a Dragon Dance set. Either way, I figure that going into Keys makes sense, because if he does Dragon Dance, I can then Thunder Wave it and go for Foul Play. If he doesn't want to go for Dragon Dance, I could be immune to the Dragon move that he could potentially go for. And that's what ended up happening. He went for the Dragon move to hit the Lottie, and I'm able to get that prediction right. If he did go for a Scarf Earthquake predicting my Keys, that would definitely have been annoying. But it shouldn't have killed me unless he was like an Adamant set or something like that. So still, like, it was a fairly safe play, I think, going into Keys. We're able to T-Wave and then kill the Tornadus with Play Rough. And at this situation, as I know, now that I'm fairly confident that this is a Scarf Haxorus, all I need to do is Thunder Wave it, and then it will be in range of Outrage from my Lottie. It's not so much that it'll be in range, but my Lottie will be guaranteed to outspeed. So I do land that T-Wave, which pretty much is going to be GG. It's just a question of, is it a 2-0 victory, like after he takes out my Klefki, or is it going to be more if he continues to get full paralyzed? And so at least 2 turns in a row here, you see he gets full paralyzed. On the third turn, he does go for the Earthquake, and does quite a bit of damage to me, but does not take me out, leaves me with 9 HP. And we're going to go for a final Foul Play at the end here, and going to be able to take out this Haxorus. So when all said and done, we end up with a nice 3-0 victory over Goldoa Dragon. And so, like I mentioned, it was aided a lot by the fact that the Victini went down early game. I don't think that would have guaranteed him the win, because he still didn't have a response for Licky Licky. But it would have been really hard. I would have had to play the game like really perfectly to set up the Licky Licky sweep. Like, I basically have to go into Klefki, get the Toxic off, not go for Thunder Wave. I would have been extremely tempted to go for Thunder Wave, but I think that would have been the wrong play. Go for Thunder Wave, and then or go for Toxic, and basically just sack Mons until he died to the Toxic damage. I guess Thunder Wave could have been okay as long as he didn't get to +3 speed, because then I could revenge kill it with Terrakion. But yeah, if I'm able to get his Victini dead by the time I get in my Licky Licky, he just wouldn't have had a way to deal with Licky Licky, I don't think. Even, like, 3 Hurricanes from Tornadus would not have killed me, and I think that would have been his best way of taking on Licky Licky. Licky Licky with, like, a +2 boost can do a ton of damage to Tornadus. So anyway, very specific set of circumstances could have bailed me out, but it still stands that the game would have been a whole lot easier for him if I hadn't crit on that first turn. Otherwise, I liked the build that we brought this week. We were able to apply a lot of offensive pressure the entire game. And that's the way that I generally like to play. I don't like to play as reactive. I like to play more proactive. And so, we do end up with a W, and it feels good, like I said, to end on a W rather than on a loss, especially after the season that we've had. It makes me feel a little bit better about the conclusion of the season. And, yeah, it's just really fun. And Goldoa was a really fantastic sport about the whole game afterwards. It did cost him a bye week, but, you know, he didn't hold it against me. You know, he said I still played really well, and that he had a lot of fun. So I do want to give a bigger, you know, a really major shout-out to him for just, you know, being a really good sport about the whole thing. So, thanks to him. And I hope he does really well in playoffs. I think he plays Techno round 1, spoilers. I don't know if Techno's match mattered for this week or not, but if you haven't seen it, whatever the outcome of his match was allowed him to make it in as the 6th seed, and he's going to go up against Goldoa as the 3 seed. So, but yeah, best of luck to all of them. And yeah, once again, as I said at the start of the video, I do want to give a major shout out to all the folks who were involved in the D-League season, this Season 4. And a big thanks to all of the fans on the channel, in the Discord, everywhere else, leaving comments on analyst videos and all that good stuff. You guys are what made this season so much fun. Hope to come back and make some more noise the next time. And until then, you can catch me in the UBL, which is going to be starting up very soon, right around the end of September or so. So with that, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out the channel for other great gaming and Pokemon content. And until the next time, I'll see you guys later.